Greetings, this is Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. I am here at the 2022 Women Leaders in College Sports National Convention here in Kansas City, and I am joined by Colleen Sorem. Colleen is the Deputy Athletics Director at University of Maryland, and Ursula Gurney. Ursula is the Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Women Administrator at University of Missouri, Kansas City. Greetings, ladies. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Now, I want to ask you guys something. We're really just talking about leadership here, right? And leadership has a number of different tentacles and go in a number of different ways. But the first question I want to run by you is learning as a leader, right? It never stops. You're always learning. And I wonder, anytime I ask a leader how they learn, they tell me about reading books or going to at conferences or talking to their friends, right? Which are great. But I want to know beyond that, right? Once you've read the book, once you've talked to your friend, once you've sat down in a conference keynote or something like that, how are you learning? How do you practice the leadership that you learned? Or how do you learn on the job, basically, in terms of how to lead people and be effective at what you do?
You know, I was thinking about this, and I do a lot of things by watching. And I think it's important to watch leaders that you emulate, watch leaders that you want to be like. And, you know, I'll give you a perfect example. When decisions are made that I'm not in the room with or that maybe I don't agree with, one of the first things that I'm going to do is I'm going to ask, I ask our boss, tell me how you walk through that decision. Can you explain to me how you got there? You can read all the books you want. You can come to all the conferences you want, but sometimes being in the room, sitting in that, it's easy for me to say what I would have done, but I wasn't in that seat. So for me, a lot of it is really action, seeing what they're doing, asking leaders. With my boss, I do that a lot. We'll walk out of a meeting and I'm like, hey, can you tell me why you made that decision? With Big Ten conference, a lot of things are happening at a higher level. Sometimes I'll just sit down and, hey, do you have 15 minutes? Can we talk about some of these things? Can you talk about your vantage point for me? Everybody has to have their own viewpoint and your own decision-making skills, but I do think watching a leader that you respect and then asking them why they made that decision can help you as a leader. So that's one of the things that I've really kind of taken as I've grown in the business. I've really taken that to heart to try to help me.
I wonder if you, real quick, have you found that you did that in the past and then you come to a situation and you recall, this is how that person handled it up, let me see if this will fit here?
Yes, I definitely have. I would say I give you probably one or two in the past 2 to 3 years where I'm like, okay, the old Colleen would have done it this way. But I remember what you said. I remember why you did it. I remember how I watched you, and I've handled it a different way.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
I think for me, same thing. Books, podcasts are fantastic. I have 2 little kids, so I'm more prone to the podcasts because it's a little quicker. But I like to think that I've learned and grown in my leadership just by doing. So similar to Colleen, like watching, learning, listening to how leaders talk, how they interact with each other, how the athletics director interacts with the chancellor or president of the university, but mostly also by doing and being open to trying new things, trying new types of leadership, working with staff in that way, and also being open to fail. One of the good things that I've been a part of with our last 2 athletic directors is they've both been open to pushing, kind of squishing you like a ball, or growth mindset as we talk about now under our current athletics director, and just being willing to grow, but willing to fail up. So you're not going to learn if you're not trying different avenues, but then also connecting with your staff. So the people that report to you or work with you, asking them, how are they doing? How is it going? What do you need out of me? What can I do better for you, for your team, for the coaching staff? So constantly being open to feedback and receiving that feedback. And similar to Colleen, also asking those that are above us, that maybe we aspire to those roles or just really admire those roles, asking the questions on decision making or how they're going to present, why they're going to present, but also asking them for feedback to help us be better, to better help serve them or the athletics department.
You mentioned feedback. It's interesting. Sometimes you'll hear somebody will tell you something and you ask for it, and so they tell you, and it won't resonate until later. And then you start thinking, this is a situation where this person was describing where I probably could improve. Have you found yourself doing that, ruminating on something that somebody has told you?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've found myself ruminating, but also sometimes initially we push back on the feedback. We want it, but then when you're hearing it, you're like, ooh, but then you know the person's right. And the great thing about most of our leaders, especially in athletics, is they want to help people. They want to lift people up. And again, I've been part of several athletic directors that are there to help you. So their feedback is genuine, and their feedback is to help you get better. So it's not just ruminating on it, but it's accepting the feedback and using the feedback to better yourself and better the situation that you're in.
Yeah, which is excellent. Feedback is a interesting thing, right? I see there are two different types of feedback, right? There's the type where you're helping somebody by giving them critique, right? But then there's also the type from people who may work for you who are giving insight on how they think the organization can improve. And that second type, well, they're both important, but the second type, you want to make sure that people feel like that insight is heard. And I wonder about you guys do you have any examples of that, of people that you have worked with that say, hey, I think it'd be better if we did this. Well, sometimes it might be out of the box or very creative, for lack of a better word, and then you've implemented it and it worked. Can you have any examples of something like that?
It's funny, we've heard 2 or 3 times today, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And, I think that it's important for us to remember that in everything we do. And sometimes you're going to get feedback and you're like, yeah, maybe we can't do that. But I really do think the better you are as a leader, the more you need to take a minute, you need to sit with it, you need to talk to your staff, you need to see, are there things that we can do? What we did, this was something, that happened in the voting year. We heard feedback from our leadership development staff, and really from actually 1 or 2 employees who had a passion for voting registration and voter education. And 3 or 4 people said, we want to do a committee. Like, we want to put a committee together, and we want to educate. We want to make sure that our students know how they can register. And there was a little bit of pushback, I would say, in the sense that, well, we don't want to make this political. We don't want to. We're not talking about party. Don't want to do things by party. But we ended up doing a committee. We called it VOTERP, and it was this great initiative where people volunteered. They were passionate. It had nothing to do with athletics. It was about bettering our young people, bettering our staff, educating them. We ended up hosting a voting site for us. We were able, because of COVID, we didn't have any basketball games going on. We were able to host volleyball. We hosted a voting site for a week, 2 weeks, and it was something where probably a year or 2 ago, maybe we would have pushed back. No, we don't want to be political. We don't want to do something. But really sitting and thinking about how can we do this and what can we do. That's just a small example of something. But I think sometimes you have to take your initial reaction out of it and talk to the people who are giving. A lot of the people who are in boots on the ground, they're the people who know what our staff wants, our student athletes wants better than we do. And I really think it's like hearing their voice.
Yeah, that's important. Ursula.
I think so. Our industry is a people industry. And many people make up an athletics department, which means there's many voices within an athletics department, and the diversity and the celebration of those voices is key to the success of an athletics department. And for us, or for myself as a leader, it's important for us to listen to the experts in each one of the units. So we've intentionally hired various people to run academic support or run the compliance office or sports medicine or sports performance in the areas of internal operations that I supervise. I want to hear their voices and have them let us know where can we improve, what do we need to be mindful of, listening to our strength staff and our medical staff come together around the area of nutrition or mental health, like what can we do to better provide our student services. One area coming up, the industry and academics that I've really stayed connected to is our student athletes and working closely with SAC. So like, what is the voice of the student athletes and what are they pointing out that they think is great and we should probably continue, but where can we improve, especially during the pandemic? One of the things we did is we had our whole internal team come together for various meetings throughout the month so we could all hear what was going on and connect with each other to better serve our student athletes more intentionally and together as a unit, since we were all working with them in different ways, virtually or as we began to come back. Another thing that we've done is implement for our student athletes having more voice. So welcoming them to our staff meetings and all staff meetings to make sure our SAC leaders are presenting and letting the whole entire department know what their initiatives are and what's important to them.
Right. Yeah, that's important. As I listen to you guys talk, I think about the women we've interviewed since we've been here at this conference, and everybody, their bio lists a number of responsibilities. Sometimes some titles are commas and slashes long. What I wonder though is, what do you consider your primary responsibility, right, in terms of your job? I know you do some financial things and you do a whole lot on campus there,
Correct, yeah.
right, at Kansas City. And so I wonder, both of you guys, what do you consider your primary role there?
Yeah, I think, yes, I do oversee a lot of various areas. For me, my primary role, I think 20 years into this, is helping to lead people to help them get them where they need to go.
Okay.
So helping other people find their purpose, helping our student athletes find their why, making sure our coaching staffs have what they need to help our student athletes be successful. So I see myself almost as someone who is here to help others be successful. So it's not just about zeroing in on the academic support unit and leading the academic support unit, but it's about now the wider scope of the department and ensuring our coaches, our unit directors, our student athletes feel empowered, inspired, want to give back to the people that are now coming up behind them. So it's the business of people is why I love this business, and helping others, lifting others up, and helping them get where they need to go.
Yeah, which is excellent. Right?
You know, I'll just piggyback. I think Ursula said it great. I oversee essentially day-to-day operations in our athletic department. So really at some point everything funnels up through me. So you have this huge people and student athlete aspect, which is why we do what we do. It's fixing problems. It's helping people. It's helping people get to see something that they don't even see, that they have something in them that they didn't even know that they had in them. You know, seeing a student athlete, you know, my favorite is seeing a student athlete and they graduate and they're going on to be a doctor, and you see them 4 years later come back. That is like the pinnacle of what we do. And then there's this whole operations piece too that I think that you can't forget. And, you know, I often say, you know, my job is to really make sure that my boss isn't dealing, I don't want things to get to him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be the gatekeeper so that on a day-to-day operation, we're rolling, we're moving forward, and he has so many things, so many constituents, so many people that he needs to deal with. What can I do to help him? So I look at my job as service to our staff, service to our student athletes, and then service to our athletic director and the outside community.
Which is important.
Yeah.
I want to ask you guys something that sometimes people don't want to answer, but it's about pushing the envelope, like with the athletics director, right? And we talked about feedback and insight, right? And sometimes there are things when it's like, now look, this is what needs to happen here. This is, I understand that you have the full picture in terms of this. This is what you hired before, and I'm telling you this is how it needs to be. Have you guys been in situations like that where you have to push the envelope with the boss? And if you have, tell us how you did it. What is your method? For anybody listening that might want to know a good method of doing that.
Who wants to go first?
I mean, I will try to go first. So we have a great leader. Dr. Brandon Martin is leading us at Kansas City Athletics, and actually this summer, him and I experienced this together, and kind of like Colleen serving in the role that's kind of oversight of day-to-day in an athletics department, a lot of things flow up to you, whether they report directly to you or you're just in the know because of your role.
Right.
And we had some things that I felt like it was really important for him to know. But because over the last several years we've developed a trusting relationship, he knows I support his vision. I think his vision is fantastic. Where he's leading the department is great. So we've developed a rapport where behind closed doors we can have honest conversations with each other, that he knows when I'm bringing something to him, it must mean it's important. It must mean that maybe he should pay attention. But I also respect the fact that maybe I'm wrong, and I'm not always right. I'm not an athletics director, but I want to do the best I can to support an athletics director. So we've built a trusting relationship where I can bring things that I think he needs to know, and then he can make a decision whether he should or shouldn't do something with them, but at least I've been able to express them, and maybe he can explain back to Colleen's original point why maybe he's looking at it through a different lens, or the chancellor's looking through it a different lens, or politics are kind of stopping or starting his ability to answer something. But I have brought it to him. And I think as a deputy AD, that's important that the staff knows you guys have that relationship, so they can talk to you, whether it's coaches' concerns, unit director concerns, student athlete concerns, that it is making it up to the athletics director so they can make that decision on how best to lead their department.
Yeah, which is excellent.
Yeah. I work for someone, Damon Evans. He's been our athletic director for the past 4 years. He hired me. We had worked together previously. We kind of moved up the ranks together, but I work for someone who wants that. It's probably why I like my position, where I'm at right now. I think when people put you in the positions that you're in, and they expect that out of you, it's easier to give that feedback. I think that it also, as we sit here and talk about women in roles, is we need our allies. Our allies have put us in these seats, and they're looking for our feedback. They're now, it's about respect, it's about relationship. It all starts with the relationship. So I think the key is, do you have a relationship? Are they going to respect that opinion, and do they want to hear it? And I think hopefully, if you're in this seat, you're in that seat for a reason, and they've put you in that seat because they respect your opinion and they actually value it and they want it. And one of my favorite things about working with Damon is that he often does it. What do you think? Hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you think? And there are many times that we go back and forth. We think very much alike, but we're also very different on things. And sometimes we'll have a conversation. He'll be like, "Yep, you're right. You're right." And there are other times where he's like, "No, like you said." But for me, I'm learning. Wow, And so for me, I think the biggest thing is I support his vision 24/7. That's my job. And publicly. Those conversations happen in private.
Right.
Those conversations there is never a time where somebody is going to hear me say, I'm not sure he should have done it that way. And that, again, is about relationship and respect. So I think when you build that rapport with your athletic director, I think they appreciate it. I can't imagine, I'm not in that seat. We don't know what it's like to be in that seat. So our job is to help them. And I think that it makes it easier for them when we're willing to give them that feedback.
Right, which is excellent. I'll ask this last question before we wrap. And it's really a question for maybe young professionals listening. Strategic thinking, right, is something that is very important as a leader. Can you guys recall when you started thinking strategically, right? And the follow-up to that is, when should people start thinking strategically? I mean, you want to when you're young, but you're kind of trying to move and groove and get things done. But if you can start when you're 5, it would be great, but that doesn't really happen. So,
I'll say 2 things to that. One of the feedback that I always got and that I always give is, be where your feet are. Do your job where you are. Strategic thinking can happen anywhere. It can happen, at an entry-level position, at the next position. I probably didn't start thinking strategically. It probably was my 3rd job, my 2nd or 3rd. It definitely wasn't my 1st job. My 1st job, I was just trying to figure it out. My 2nd job, I was trying to figure out. Probably my 2nd job, I was trying to figure out how to get to the 3rd job. And probably in my 3rd job, I was like, I know what I'm doing. What am I doing with it now? So my advice would be, I didn't do a lot of this when I was younger. I didn't have somebody who pushed me, who challenged me, who wanted me to get, I shouldn't say that. I didn't know about all of the professional development opportunities and all the things, and then I didn't do it for myself. So for me, what I would do is, if I could go back, I would have read books earlier, I would have asked more questions earlier. I probably waited 4, 5, 6 years to do that. And some of these young, it is amazing. I mean, I have people coming up asking us, it's so exciting, and I was afraid to do that. So I would say to start it earlier, because I look back now and you're like, I'm like a little behind. I'm a little behind because of that. So.
I think for me, it's when I got out of the athletics department, and I don't mean job-wise. I mean enjoyed and joined like national committees, national organizations. So for me, one of the organizations that's near and dear to me is N4A, which is the National Association of Academic and Student Athlete Development Professionals. And I listened to the advice of someone who I admire, Joe Scoggin, who's at Tennessee. And I was like, what committee should I get involved in? Like, how do I get involved? I didn't even know where to start. And he's like, strategic planning. If you want to know how the organization functions, join strategic planning. And I did. And it opened my eyes up to strategic thinking. And not only did I meet some of the best friends that I have in collegiate athletics, but it opened me up to big picture thinking, to the thinking about the business of college athletics and how all the moving parts go together and how we all need to move together, to accomplish the goal. So for me, it started about 10, 12 years ago through work, through a national association, but it's only elevated from there, working on the committee on academics, actually becoming the president of N4A, and now in my own department. As you elevate your thinking and see the bigger picture, it helps you grow in your role on how the athletics department fits into the university and how the two can work together to drive the mission of each forward.
Which is excellent. Is there a time when you think people should start? I mean, I guess earlier the better, right?
Yeah, I think the earlier the better, but I think it's understanding where, say, if you're an expert in compliance or academics or sports medicine, like how it fits into the larger picture. right? It's not just one unit, it's multiple units that fit an athletics department. So I think the sooner you can start to engage in women leaders or NACTA or an N4A, the better, because you start to see the world outside of your own department, and you start to meet people who want to lift you up, who want to bring you along. Again, we met 12 years ago. It's great being able to sit down here 12 years later as two deputy ADs talking to you about this. So I think the sooner you can try and just move out of your comfort zone, so think strategically, the better you'll be in the long run.
Which is excellent. Well, ladies, this has been an excellent conversation, and we really appreciate you joining us here on Athletic Director U.
Thank you.
Thanks for
We
having us.
appreciate it.
Thanks.
That was Colleen Sorem. Colleen is the Deputy Athletics Director at University of Maryland, and Ursula Gurney. Ursula is the Deputy Director of Athletics and Senior Woman Administrator at University of Missouri, Kansas City. And of course, I'm Ty Brown with Athletic Director U. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.